Welcome to the Billable Mom podcast, led by attorney Cari Rincker, where we discuss working motherhood, but especially geared to professional mothers who are trying to juggle their time. Our time is precious, both at work and at home. We talk time management and productivity hacks, the struggles of being a working parent, and provide a community where other billable moms are also trying to calm the chaos 6 minutes at a time. Listen to stories of other working moms, but especially lawyer moms, navigate the waters balancing career and the ever-present demands of motherhood.
Hi, I'm Cari Rincker, and I'm the Billable Mom. I am excited for today's conversation. I have Carissa Haning in the house, and she is an estate planning attorney. And in way of background, I was introduced to Carissa a few years ago by a personal injury lawyer friend that we both have. And Carissa and I and a couple other female estate planning attorneys get together sort of on a semi-regular monthly basis. And I'm going to call it a mastermind. I don't know if it's a true mastermind in the traditional sense, where we talk about, estate planning and trust issues. And that's how I got to know Carissa. But Carissa, welcome to the podcast. And why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about you and maybe your path to being a working parent?
So my name is Carissa, as you said, and I have been a licensed attorney for 23 years, 20, I don't know, something along those lines, 20 plus years. And I wanted to be a lawyer since I was 8. So I made it happen. And I was a lawyer for 8 years, 6 years, something like that, before we adopted our twins internationally. And then 10 years approximately after we adopted them, we had a baby that was never supposed to happen, but did. And 3 years after that, I said, I want to go back to practicing law, because I had stopped when the twins came home. And that's how I got where I am today.
So there's a whole lot to unpack there. What's funny is that when you were even describing that very short timeline, is that it was popping into my head. It sometimes feels like, as a female professional, that is like your career gets divided into half. Your career before children, BC, and then after children, AC. Like, I feel that way about my own life. Like, I don't know how you feel about that.
Oh yeah, I definitely was a courtroom lawyer. I love being in the courtroom. I loved everything about the courtroom before I had children. And I knew that was not going to be a reality. Couldn't happen after kids, or I wouldn't get to see them. And so I am not a courtroom lawyer now. I am a contract attorney for the state's attorney's office in my county, but other than that, I don't see the courtroom very often.
So let's talk about that, if you don't mind, because I have had a love-hate relationship with litigation. And, I finally got my conference room table back here, and it's turning into a war room.
Gorgeous, by the way.
Thank you. I turned into a war room because I have a farm divorce trial this summer, and I'm starting to get prepared for. And, I have really struggled with my decision on whether or not to do litigation or not, because the thing is that I do like litigation, but it is, what I don't like about it is it just sucks the life out of me. It takes away from everything else, including my family. And, I am approaching this weekend, and I have a big hearing next week, and I'm basically telling my parents, like, I've got to come into the office to work. And so talk to me about that, how you've sort of, have you decided that you're just not going to do litigation?
That's what I decided. If I go back to the courtroom, it'll be as a state's attorney, a full-time state's attorney. Well, I'm a state's attorney now, but I'm not full-time. And if I go back to the courtroom, it will be as a full-time state's attorney, and not because I know how I get when I'm prepping for a trial, and you just don't see me. You don't see me for a week or 2 weeks at a time, because I have to I like all my ducks in a row, because it is my, as they say, it is my circus and they are my monkeys. And I do have to make sure everybody's where they need to be. And I get that in the state's attorney's office, and they give me plenty of time to prep for things and do things, so I don't have to worry about that. But I am definitely that trial attorney who my kids wouldn't see me for 2 or 3 weeks, and my brain can't handle that. I stayed home with my kids for 12 years for a reason, and there's no way I could step away from that now.
Yeah, litigation is all consuming in some aspects, especially when you are entering into trial and during trial. And, so you do trust and estates. Do you do any probate and trust administration? Because you and I both know that can be related in litigation too.
No trust administration. I worked for an attorney who is constantly being called up to the ARDC, and he's actually lost a case where they claimed he took $200,000 of the trust's money. And so I will not touch trust administration with a 10-foot pole. That said, I do probate. I love probate. But in my county in Illinois, unless there is a fight over the probate, you don't appear in court. You don't even, and even that fight happens over Zoom. So it's sitting in my office having the conversation with the court, and it's not, to me, it's not courtroom work.
Well, so ideally that's how probates would be. It doesn't always work out that way, right? I mean, I do divorces, and I have to tell you, I've seen some of the worst fights in my life that are happening, not in the matrimonial context, but like after somebody dies and people are fighting over money. So
my husband calls it family law after the parents are dead.
Yeah.
And so he either tells people I am a death and dying lawyer, or he says she practices family law, but she doesn't call it that. She calls it trust and estates.
Yep. I hear that. Okay. So Carissa, I want to back up a little bit in your work history and sort of your path to motherhood there. Again, so could you back up? And I know that your children, you have twins that are adopted. So talk to us about where you were with your career at that moment in time. And I'd love to also delve into the international adoption process.
Sure. So in my career at that point, I had case law with my name on it. I had ran personal injury departments of law firms. I had all these things. And we found out we couldn't have children naturally, or that was what we were told. Obviously, we have one naturally now, but we decided to go. My husband didn't want to risk the birth parents coming back. And so we went with international adoption. There's a lot of risks with international adoption that we didn't consider at the time, but some of them happened to us and some didn't, but they happened to friends of ours. And so I had been running divisions of law firms and then stepped into a role in the place where I live that was all family law. And I know you do divorces, but this chick cannot handle a divorce. She can't handle the emotions that go along with it and all of the things that happen with it. And it was the worst time. And so when the twins came home and needed me, and I'll talk about how we got to them and how long that took in a minute, but I couldn't go back to doing divorces, which was all I was doing. And I said, nope, I'm all done, and stopped practicing law because I was convinced it meant only doing family law in this area. That is obviously not true because I don't do any family law now. I refer out all of my prenups and all that kind of stuff. So I don't touch family law with a 10-foot pole either. But at the time that they came home, I was convinced. You also asked about the international adoption process. So it is a very long process. We joke in our house that I had an elephant pregnancy because it took almost 2 years for that process to happen. So you start out and you're like, I want to adopt a baby, or whatever you want to do from whatever country. And then you have to fill out, it's called a dossier, and it's all of the paperwork. You have to have a home study done. You have to have all of the things. Because during the process, we used to joke if people had to go through this to have kids, nobody'd have kids. And so you have to fill out all this paperwork. You get fingerprinted from here to high heaven with the county, with the state, with the federal government. Everybody goes through your background. You have to be honest with everybody. If you've had therapy, you have to talk about that. You have to go through all these things. And then that can take anywhere from 3 months to a year. And in our case, during the time that was happening, we had said we wanted to adopt from Vietnam. And we went into the process asking for 2 babies. We didn't care if they were related or not, but we had asked for 2 babies. And they were like, yeah, sure, you can have 2 babies. And so Vietnam, in the meantime, it was found that they were kidnapping and selling babies. And so that freaked me out, and they closed down Vietnam to investigate all of the stuff that was happening behind the scenes. This also happened in Guatemala, a few African countries, a whole bunch of other things. And so places were getting shut down left and right.
That's awful. I cannot even imagine.
I can't imagine feeling like I kidnapped somebody's baby.
No.
That's the harder thing for me. Like, I just couldn't. So our social worker said, why don't we go with South Korea? Because it is the longest standing program. At the time, it was about 50 years old. And they're very good at what they do. And we were devastated because we couldn't go to Vietnam because my best friend growing up was a Vietnamese refugee. So I was like, fine, whatever. And that's what we did. But in Korea, we couldn't bring home 2 babies unless they were related. So it had to be twins. And our social worker had never referred a set of twins. And she told us it would never happen. And we were like, okay, fine. If you say we can bring home twins, if it happens, we'll say we'll take only 1 healthy baby if that's what happens. And we got the twins, and she retired after us. She was like, I'm done. I've seen it all now. And she retired. But then we had to bring them home and officially adopt them in the United States, which was a whole nother process because they made us wait like a year and a half to adopt them. We brought them home October 13th of 2008. We landed back on U.S. soil. The adoption was final April 29th of 2010.
So I'm curious because, prior to me getting pregnant with my son, I was thinking about adoption, thinking about domestic adoption. I was thinking about international adoption. I know I stated this on a previous podcast. I actually became a licensed foster care parent at the time. And then, as luck would have it, I soon thereafter became pregnant and put it on hold. But in Googling around with the international adoption, and here I am, I'm an attorney. It was overwhelming. And I honestly was worried about getting in the hands of a scam. There's all these financing, schedules, like send $4,000 here and then $5,000 here. And then, they're $1,800 to this person. And it's international. So was just scared to death. And
they could take the twins back from us until they closed the door on the airplane. So when we went to Korea to pick the twins up, my biggest fear was them coming to me as we were sitting on the airplane and saying, nope, their mom wants them back. Mm-hmm. And they could take them back. And it's happened before. They could take them back till they closed the door. The twins came home 15 years ago, almost 16 now. And in the last 15 years, they've changed it so the adoptions are final in Korea. So that part has changed. And that also makes it so that the minute you touch down with your kids in the United States, if you were both present for that adoption, the kids are United States citizens. And so they immediately get all of the benefits.
So you go to Korea, then you actually legally adopt through the Korea court system.
Now, yeah.
Korea, then jump on an airplane. And I know that we talked prior to this podcast, but oh my goodness, tell me about that flight.
That flight was a nightmare. they had given us Sam and Joe. My children's names are Samuel and Johanna. We call them Sam and Joe. They had given us Sam and Joe 24 hours before we got on that flight, but their foster parents kept coming back to visit, which made the bonding process really hard in that 24 hours because they thought they would go back with the foster parents.
Yeah.
And then they said, they put us on the airplane, said, see y'all later. Good luck. And we got on that airplane and we were the first ones on, and Joe screamed until the plane took off, like down the runway and to take off to start flying. And Sam didn't sleep for 10 hours. Joe also hated all of us. And so they put my husband's dinner down in front of him on the airplane, and she was on his lap, and she didn't like that he had dinner put down in front of him, and she went boom, and his dinner flew. And the Korean lady sitting next to my husband could tell we were in over our heads. And she spoke to the stewardess in Korean. So we had no idea what she said at that point. We know now, but we had no idea what she said at that point. Then she took Joe, which made Joe super happy because this Korean person had her, not these two white people. And next thing I know, here appears the stewardess with a new meal for my husband. And we didn't see the Joe again until we were done eating. And she even changed her diaper while she had her, this Korean lady. That part was amazing. But like, there was a lady sitting next to my mom who was complaining about every child on the flight. And my mom, she didn't know my mom was with two of the kids until we took Sam over to sit with my mom and used the bassinet in front of my mom. And then I guess she shut up. But until then, she was complaining about, because there was another little kid on the flight that was screaming bloody murder. That was not my child. And she was complaining about every child on the flight. She stopped when my mom took Sam for a little bit because he hadn't slept at all in 10 hours. But yeah, we didn't fly with the twins again until they were 6.
So, and I know they were 14 months at the time, and my daughter is 14 months now. So it's really easy for me to visualize what this would be like. And wow, you had your hands full. So tell me a little bit about the bonding. And at this point, you come home from South Korea. Were you still working at that moment in time?
I was on FMLA leave at that time, but my firm didn't want to think that I was on FMLA leave. They tried to call me while I was in Korea. Like, I didn't answer the call because it would have been an international call, cost me a fortune. But they were trying to get a hold of me while I was in Korea. At that point, I knew I was done because I couldn't go to the bathroom without the twins throwing a huge fit. There was no way I was going to be able to leave 4 to 8 hours a day to practice law and leave them in childcare where they'd probably get kicked out because all they'd do was scream. And at the time, neither of them really liked me. Neither of the twins thought I was a good person. I mean, I'm not sure I would have either if you just handed me to a literal stranger and said, see y'all later.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there's a trauma there, right? I mean, you know, and I've taken the classes. I mean, there is a trauma when you take children away from
the people who cared for them their entire lives at that point, because they were in the hospital. They were 25-week preemies, 25 weeks, 5 days. And they were in the hospital for 4 months. And the day they got out of the hospital, they were given to these foster parents. And so they had been with these foster parents for 10 months. And so like the ceremony where they gave them to us was not only like the most exciting thing in the world, but the most heartbreaking thing as well, because you're watching these foster parents who have raised these kids for you for 10 months. You're watching them look at you and they know they're doing the right thing for these kids. They're 10-year veterans of doing this, and they are both crying, and men in Korea do not cry.
Aww.
And so like you're excited because this is what you've wanted the whole time, but is devastating because you're watching what it's doing to this other couple now. And so that was hard.
I do want to fast forward because I do know we can spend probably an entire podcast just talking about international adoption. But, you know, I think like being a working parent with biological children is one thing, but being an adopted parent, I think is actually like a whole other level, because there's all these other like layers of complexity and challenge with bonding and everything else that you're experiencing. And so I'd like to fast forward to the day you quit and your job. And here's the thing is, like, I know you then quit for 12 years. And it's fascinating to me how, you were practicing law for 8 years. And trust me, like, I have had these days where I'm like, I think I'm just going to put my white flag of surrender up. I don't think I can do this anymore. I can't work. And frankly, this is part of the reason why I started this podcast, is because I want to talk about that. So tell me about how that felt.
It was my whole life. Remember at the beginning, I said I wanted to be a lawyer since I was 8. I watched Sandra Day O'Connor get sworn into the Supreme Court. I looked at my parents and I said, that's what I'm going to do. My farmer parents looked at me and said I was crazy. And so I spent my whole life fighting to get to be this lawyer. And I wanted to be this lawyer more than anything in the world. And in one fell swoop, in one email, I said, I'm done. Mm-hmm. And I called the ARDC and retired my license that day.
Did you feel free? Or did you like, oh my gosh, what did I just do?
I was like, what the heck am I doing? And my sorority sisters, I was in a sorority in college, and my sorority sisters, who knew me very, very well, sat me down and were like, what the heck are you doing? And I was like, I can't leave these kids. I fought hard for these kids too. Like, I can't have both at this point. Like, I can't do both things at this juncture. And I picked my kids.
And I guess your story just really resonates with me, because I feel like as professional women, we are achievers, right? Like, we have gone through the educational system. We've achieved this, we've achieved that. We passed the bar exam, we do this. And then all of a sudden now we're in motherhood. And it's like, well, you know what? I fought for this too. And I want to be the best parent I can be. And maybe it's time for me to take a break from my career so I can focus on this. So.
Well, and you feel super judged as a mom. I don't know about the rest of you.
Oh, I do.
I had spent my whole life being judged on every grade, everything. So now the one thing that I'm doing full-time, nonstop, is being a mom. And it felt like I was being judged on every little thing that I did. Did I get the right developmental therapist? Did I see the right doctor? Did I do this right? Did I do that right? And the worst part was, the definition of right seemed to be moving. Like, there was no, what was right on this day was wrong on this day. Even today, I mean, I have 2 almost 17-year-olds and a 7-year-old, and the definition of right continues to be a moving target. That is the hardest thing about being a mom, in my opinion.
I do want to talk about, so IVF and fertility struggles in your biological child, but whenever we spoke prior to this, I know that you said, like, listen, like, mental health was a really big deal for me. And I have said this before in this podcast. I feel like I oftentimes come to work because I need a break, right? I mean, childcare is hard. And, and I like, kudos to like stay-at-home moms, because it is not easy. And like, I don't think I could do it. So how did you kind of keep time for yourself in the mix with everything?
So my husband, he's amazing. I'm just going to put that out there. One of the developmental therapists for the twins sat him down about 6 months after the twins came home and said, either you get this woman out of the house for more than just the kids, for herself, or you're going to be visiting her in a mental hospital, because she is trying to do everything perfect for these kids, and there's no definition of perfect, and she needs time for herself. And so he took them quite literally. And every month or every 2 weeks, he sent me out for dinner with my friends. And then I am a crafter, creator. I have very creative side. And he made sure my sewing machine was always working. He made sure that I had all the things to make all the things. My daughter had a 90%, Joe had a 90% made by me wardrobe for the first 13 years of her life.
Oh my goodness.
And so, and people coveted that wardrobe, which I found funny because to me, it was just taking pieces of fabric and letting them tell me what they wanted to be and turning them into that. And Hazel wears a lot of those dresses now and stuff that Joe wore when she was little. And I still get, I can't believe you made that. And now it's even crazier because they're like, wait, you made that and you're practicing law and you're a mom? And I'm like, that's my mental, that's my me time. That's, and my husband will tell you, if I don't get my time in the craft room on the regular, my mental health starts going down. But he sends me away twice a year too. So I go away by myself 2 weeks a year.
That's amazing. That, I mean, and you know, listen, I think that I started this podcast because I wanted to have conversations with women like you, like, how are you doing it? And I think that what's been great is that every woman has a different story on how they're able to do it. But
yes,
a resounding theme is that, like, listen, I have to make time for myself. I have to take care of my own mental health, my own physical health, you know, and all the things, or else, like, no, I cannot do it. And so I think that's an awesome sort of underlying theme here.
Yeah. That's how I take care of my mental health. Every March and October, I go with my girlfriends. And if I talk about work, so here's the other thing. I have this amazing set of girlfriends and they will do anything to protect me, but they also know I would do anything to protect them. When we're gone, if I talk about work, I have to drink. I have to do shots of vodka with jelly beans in them. I don't drink very often, so not very many shots and I'd be 3 sheets to the wind. And they also know that I won't practice law when I'm drinking. So they know if they tell me that the threat is I have to drink, then I'll shut up and so they won't let me talk about the law firm during that week, even though more than half of them are clients and probably have questions, but they won't talk about them during that week.
That's great. Hey, Carissa, we're going to take a quick break here from our sponsor. But when we get back, I want to just very briefly touch upon, you know, your daughter and sort of her path, and then get into you getting back into law after being out of the workplace for 12 years.
Yes, that would be great.
This episode of the Billable Mom podcast is brought to you by Rincker Law PLLC, focusing in food, farm, and family. When I'm not a mother juggling 2 littles, I'm the principal attorney of Rincker Law, where we believe that strong communities have both strong families and a food, fiber, and agriculture system. At Rincker Law, not only do we do family and matrimonial law, but we also work with entrepreneurs and agriculture producers on business, estate, and succession planning. We are a client-focused, results-driven law practice. At Rincker Law, we also support other billable moms, not only here in the workplace at Rincker Law, but also with clients, helping them live their dreams both in business and at home. For more information, visit us at www.rinkerlaw.com. Cari Rincker, Rincker Law, Food, Farm, and Family.
All right, Carissa, I'd like to just very briefly touch upon sort of the miracle baby that you have, your biological child. And I mean, you were out of the workforce when you were pregnant with her and were going through all of that. But why don't you just briefly talk about that path, and then we'll get into you getting back into the practice of law.
So we had been through a lot of different things. I had issues with my reproductive organs, and my husband had issues, and they told us it would never happen. And I had to have my uterus reconstructed. And so they told us we couldn't do IVF when that happened. And that's how the twins came about. And then we accidentally got pregnant about 9 years ago, and we found out it could happen. And we lost that baby. And at that time we tried IVF, and they told me, I was in my late 30s. They told me I didn't have any eggs left. I'd never get pregnant. If I wanted to have a baby, I was going to have to do it with somebody else's eggs. And I was not okay with that. And about a year and a half later, I thought I was going through menopause and I found out I was pregnant. And so the pregnancy was pretty simple and basic, other than Hazel thought she needed a swimming pool because she had enough fluid for 3 babies, which they still don't know why. But then Hazel was born. She was perfect baby. And I tell anyone who listens now, she's the perfect combination of my husband and myself. And probably a gift from my husband's father, who died about 6 months before I got pregnant. And my grandmother, who died when I was 15. When he got to heaven, we're pretty sure she hunted him down to find out how things were going. And that's how Hazel came to be. And Hazel is my mini me. And she thinks this law firm is hers, if that says anything.
So let's talk about your path back. Like, there you are, you're a mother of 3, you have a young child. And what made you decide to practice law again after basically giving it up for 12 years?
I don't remember why I was searching jobs, because it was 2019. It's not like I needed one. My husband is an actuary. He can take care of the whole family. But I saw my dream job listed at State Farm. And I knew I wouldn't be able to get it unless I had an active law license. My law license was still retired. So I looked my husband in the eye and I said, I want my law license back. As long as I don't have to practice family law, I'll figure something out. And he was like, okay. And I said, but I really want this job at State Farm. Is it okay if I apply for it? And he was like, yeah. Now, obviously, State Farm wouldn't even talk to me because I had a 12-year break in practicing law. But in the process, I realized I really liked the idea of going back to doing something that I loved. And it would be a good way to teach my kids that it's okay to take breaks from things and do other things, but always come back to what you love. And the twins were not happy about me going to work at all. They were kind of upset about it. Hazel was 3. She didn't know any different. And like I said, right now she thinks this is her law firm. So she's been thrilled with the return to work. But that job at State Farm is what got me thinking about, it's time for me to go back. It's time for me to do something with my life.
And I've also learned this myself. So when you put your bar license on hold, you don't get to just take that time off from CLE. So you had to catch up on 12 years of CLEs. Mm-hmm. And so tell me about that experience.
It was over 300 hours of CLEs. And because I knew I wasn't going to get the job at State Farm, I initially started out doing just random CLEs, but I decided I needed to have a backup plan, and the backup plan became trust and estates. And so I found out that the law was changing in Illinois on January 1st of 2020. And so they had 5 million CLEs out there about trust and estates. So I just learned everything I could about trust and estates as a backup plan in case I didn't get the job at State Farm. Obviously, I didn't get the job at State Farm. But that's how I caught up on my CLEs. And you have to say, yes, I caught up all these CLEs. It's a pain. And I'm glad I didn't do it now, because Illinois has changed the CLE reporting thing. And they actually have to report it to them, because some of them would not have reported it to Illinois the correct way. And I would have been screwed. And I would have had to do even more CLEs. So I tell any lawyer who wants to take a break now that if you really think you might be coming back, keep your CLEs up to date, because 30 hours every 2 years is a much easier process than 300 hours in a year.
Yeah, that's overwhelming. I mean, and again, remembering that you are also a parent of 3 children at the time, so that is overwhelming. So in summary, I think you opened up your practice in around when COVID hit, right?
January 1st of 2021.
Goodness gracious. So here you are back in the workforce. And then 2 months later, the governor's, giving shelter in place orders. And, so tell me about sort of your balance, so to speak, of a working parent business owner with 3 kids right now.
The balance is hard. initially it wasn't. I didn't have hardly any clients. No one knew who I was. But now I have 5 employees that I have to like, well, 4, the receptionist quit. There will hopefully be 5 again soon. But I have 5 employees I have to pay. I have bills that have to be paid, rent, lights, etc. And so what happens at this point is the office has become a second home for the family. They all come here after dance class, make sure the trash gets taken out, the floor gets vacuumed, and, all the things. And the kids see it as part of what makes them. We've sold it to them as, this is how we're paying to go to Korea next summer. This is how we're paying to, let you guys take all the lessons you want to take and do all the things you want to do. And so they see it as, this is something they can't practice law, right? But they can do all the other things. My
that's so
16-year-old daughter comes in and helps with the receptionist stuff right now. And so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. My mom owns a computer software company. And I remember as a child, I would go into her office and I would format discs back when we were like formatting discs. And I just think it's great for kids to be exposed to the entrepreneurial efforts of their parents and to see that dream. So walk me through a typical day. And I know you're a little bit of a night owl. So let's talk about that.
So we wake up around 7:30, depends on the day. And everybody's getting ready for school. The twins do their own thing. They are old enough and they know they are expected to be up and out the door and to the bus. If they miss the bus, we'll take them. But, they're expected to do those things. And then we've got to Hazel goes to private Christian school. So we have to take her and pick her up every day. My husband and I have what we call, I'm a huge Disney fanatic. And so on The Lion King, they have the morning report that Zazu always gives the king. And so we call it the morning report. And my husband and I go over the day. This is who needs to be here, then, now, at this time. And we make sure that everything happens. While all 3 kids are in school, we get our work day to ourselves. And so my husband is one of my witnesses who comes nonstop for witness signings. He's probably signed every estate plan except for his own in the office. And so that's really cool that he can, because of the actuary aspect, he can stop and come and do that and then go back home. But he also picks our daughter up after school every day, the one who has to be picked up, the 7-year-old. And then we decide who needs to pick up who, where, and get people where. Because with 3 kids, you could be in 3 different parts of town, and it can take 30 minutes to get across town if it's the right time of day. So we talk about who takes which kid where. And if it's not on the calendar, we told the twins, you don't get to do it. Because if we can't talk about it at the morning report, then you're out of luck. And they've gotten really good at making sure all their stuff is on the calendar. And then I work throughout the day with my remote assistant, paralegals, etc. And we get the stuff ready for the day. And then I go home around 5 or 6, spend some time with the kids. Hazel goes to bed between 8 and 9, and then do a little bit more work before I go to bed. Could be midnight, 2 a.m. I have always been a night owl. So the getting up at 7 is the part I hate. Other than that, I could be a happy little camper staying up till 2 or 3, getting all the work done. But it has to be, I can do best when I'm uninterrupted. So that midnight to 2 a.m. is a really good time for me to get stuff done.
Well, you're not alone. I mean, in interviewing women who are doing it, so to speak, I mean, I feel like a resounding theme is like they're finding their hours or finding their quiet hours. And mostly it's after the kids go to sleep. And I am struggling with it. Maybe it's because my kids are younger, and I know that we spoke on the phone last night, but I actually, after I hung up the phone with you, had a really bad night with my 14-month-old who woke up, would not go back to sleep. I did the last ditch effort. I'm going to go take her for a drive. She was crying. So, 2 a.m. I was up with her till 2 a.m. trying to get her to go back to sleep. And, so I guess the thing is that it's hard. And, you know,
It
just
is.
try to find those pockets of time, and you got to take them where you can.
Yep. And that is something that is harder for me to learn with the 16-year-olds than the 7-year-old. I'll say that.
So I know we're close to being out of time. I want to touch upon any products or books that have been helpful to you, either in your law practice or as a working parent.
So the biggest thing that helps me in my law practice right now is Lawmatics. It's web-based. I don't have to be in the office to get my work done. I am able to conditionally format documents. I'm able to keep track of everybody that I need to keep track of in this software. I can bill. I don't have to do any of it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to be, and they have just been amazing. They're always adding new stuff to the software. They're always doing new things. It's absolutely amazing. And so, I think that is one of the best things that's out there for my law practice.
You were the one that recommended it to me, and I was pregnant with my daughter at the time, and I was like fighting with my mother, who, you know, kind of is a tech consultant. She's like, "Do not get a CRM program now. You're about ready to have a baby," you know. And I've basically have spent the last year or so building it out. My daughter's 14 months, but wow, it is phenomenal. It's kind of like a blank canvas. So you
joke
how to do whatever you want it to do.
Living, breathing thing at our office. Everything can change. If I have a brilliant moment or they change something, everything can change. But I think that's the best part of it, in my opinion, is that it doesn't have to stay static. Most lawyers get stuck doing the same thing over and over again and don't change what they're doing. And this way, I can have the theory that everything can change and be for the better, even tomorrow, if Lawmatics added a new great thing tonight.
Yeah. So what other, do you listen to podcasts? Do you have a few?
I do. I like to listen to podcasts in the car, and my poor husband has listened to all of them as well. And so I listen to Maximum Lawyer. I listen to Lawyerist. I listen to Billable Mom. I listen to, New Solo, getting out of that one because it's not applying to me much anymore, but it did in the beginning. And the Lawyerist Small Firm Roadmap is probably one of the best books out there. My poor husband listened to it on audiobook like 4 times before they changed it. And so I haven't made him listen to it, the new version yet, but he probably will have to on some.
Yeah, I'm also a Lawyerist fan, and I've read the book, The Small Firm Roadmap, and I just wanted to put a little Stephanie Everett from The Lawyerist is actually going to come on the Billable Mom podcast. Really? So I'm have my interview with her this summer. So stay tuned for that.
I can't wait for that. She's a sweetheart. I've talked to her multiple times. I have not locked into the mentorships that they offer, but I've been trying to decide what I want to do. The time has come. I need something above just. So I've been trying to decide between Maximum Lawyer and Lawyerist and what I want to do, but I need the next step up, and I think that's where I need to go. I like having somebody behind me who can help out with things.
Well, Carissa, you are inspiring as a lawyer, as a mother, as a working mother. And so tell our listeners how they can find you.
So you can go to HaningLawOffice.com, and you can text me from HaningLawOffice.com, contact me. There's a link in there that fills out a form that puts you into our Lawmatics flows. And so you can fill out forms for us there. You can call us at 309-808-2227. Sorry, I don't even know my own phone number. And you can email me at Carissa@HaningLawOffice.com. Chances are you'll hear back from my remote assistant, but you can email me there. And that is the best ways to contact me at this point. I haven't got any further than those, but that is what we do at this juncture.
Well, Carissa, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast.
Thank you, Cari. You're an amazing woman too. And some days I don't know how you do it either. So I think you're amazing. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Billable Mom. At The Billable Mom, we don't pretend to have the answers, but instead have all the questions. Please find us on social media and join the conversation at The Billable Mom on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, X, Pinterest, and YouTube. We also have a Facebook group where like-minded billable moms find solidarity and provide a resource to one another. You can learn more about The Billable Mom and our picks for juggling work and motherhood at www.thebillablemom.com. You can also connect with Cari Rincker directly on social media at Cari Rincker. Until next time, let's calm the chaos 6 minutes at a time.